So, welcome to another episode of This Is It. This is episode 2. Good evening to you, Inessa.
Good evening. So, how are you?
Another episode of This Is It. This is episode 2. Good evening to you, Inessa.
Oh, good evening.
Wonderful. I've just had a little bit of
echo.
Myself talking to a little bit of echo coming in, but we're okay. So here we go. You're coming in from London tonight?
Yes, I'm coming from London tonight. And what about you? Where are you now?
Okay, I'm in Manchester. Oh, here we are. We're just waiting on you. Just before we put up the 30 seconds, good evening to you, Mitchell.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Remind me to talk about this "Can you hear me" thing straight after the.
Can you hear me?
So here we are again, episode 2 of This Is It, Thursday night specials from us, reality TV at its best. We discussed that we're going to talk about loss and how to cope with it, how to adapt with it. But you reminded me of something just before we get into that, this "Can you hear me" thing that we have. Now, you're not the only one, so I don't want you to feel, a little bit kind of picked up. But it's like, I think it's because of this, we're not yet used to modern technology. Like people, lifting the phone and saying, "Can you hear me?" Right? Who does that? Nobody does that, right?
Yeah.
We've got this thing, "Can you hear me?" Obviously, if I can't hear you, and you're just doing this, I'm going to say, "Mitchell, I can't hear you," right? But we've got this anxiety or something that says, maybe you can't hear me, because there's a lot of glitches, right? I had one with Inessa just before you came on. We had a glitch where there was echo coming from the mic. But we have these anxieties, and we're like, "Can you hear me? Can you?" Yeah, of course we can hear you. Why shouldn't I hear you? Right? Is there a reason why we shouldn't hear you?
Yes, there is actually, because during my day, I do a lot of meetings, and a lot of the time, all you get is, "We can't hear you," or "There's a fault." So I've got into the habit of every now, "Can you hear me?" rather than start talking and then someone says, "Can't hear you." Right. I think that's not a habit. It's just a habit now.
I think it is a habit, because if we couldn't hear you and you said, "Can you hear me?" then we wouldn't be able to hear you.
Very sorry. You would say, "I can't hear you."
Yeah, so we would say it first. Right. We've got people coming on. We're going to be talking about an interesting subject tonight. We've got Avril, first of all, saying, "Good evening, Dov. I've seen you 3 nights in the row." Yeah, Avril, it's becoming a bit of a habit. Yeah. And it can be taken in a wider sense as in not understanding and communication. Absolutely. So this is exactly this. We're talking about loss. Now, automatically, even when we were just kind of discussing it, it kind of automatically goes to loss of a loved one. It's death, right? Mm-hmm. But putting that where it's due, giving it its credit, there's a lot of other loss in this world that is difficult and painful, including loss of hearing, apropos just "Can you hear me?" And I think a lot of people these days, especially, including tonight in Manchester, going into tier 3, are suffering all sorts of different types of loss.
Yeah.
So, any losses that you've experienced, both of you, that just to bring into the conversation, first of all, before we kind of discuss the big picture?
I have quite interest in Lost. I don't know if I can call this Lost or not Lost. When I immigrated to this country, I had to change language, of course, because I speak Ukrainian and Russian. And also when I came to England, I have to speak different language, which I never knew. So for me, it was kind of loss of connection with people. I felt like this because my English wasn't great. I learned English from people. I never went to the school. And also, I was asking people all the time, can you understand me? Like, instead, can you hear me? I was asking, can you understand me? Because I had this massive insecurity about myself to be understood. And in other things, I felt kind of disconnection from people. So when the people speak in different language, everything around me was kind of like virtual, not real. It's kind of like deep dream, and you don't understand what's going on around you, and you won't just wake up and be understandable, talk, so, and have all this connection with society around you. So it was kind of interesting experience. Still, I start to speak confidently English.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So you've got this. I'm hearing an echo again. Are you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm fine.
No, I can hear it. I was hearing it off you, Dove. I was hearing it off you.
I don't know what that is. Hold on, let me just close things because maybe there's things open. If you still hear it, let me know. Okay, that's it. So let me just understand. You came to this country. Your English is minimal. You
I
feel
didn't
that.
speak. Sorry, I interrupt you. I didn't speak at all for 3 years.
So for 3 years, so that's a real disconnection.
Yeah.
And while that was happening, what were you feeling like being in a foreign place, but not being able to connect properly with the population? Did it? I would imagine it affects you getting to know people or having relationships or having friends. How did it make you feel?
Yeah, it's really, it takes your self-esteem down a lot. Because when I came here, I had a very big insecurity and fear to meet English-speaking people. Like I started learning a little bit English, like words and grammar, but for me, I'm very difficult to learn languages. I'm really suffering. It's so difficult. Till now, I still learn English. So for me, it was difficult. And also because I met lots of Russian-speaking people. So it was like little communities all over. But obviously, when you go to shop, when you go to some kind of jobs and or out, is English speaking people, is English language around. So I felt kind of really insecure about myself. I felt really disconnected. I started to isolate myself to meet English speaking people because I met some people which is try to help me to learn English, try to ask me out, but I never went because I thought I'm gonna look sort of say not like stupid, like very like like this way. So not educated, and yeah, so it was really difficult. But they also when I was at work, because I had some jobs which was in the English industry, but you don't need to really know language there. You just like use your logics. Like for example, if you do waitressing or something kind of stuff. And in beginning, I came to UK. So yeah, so you kind of have this feeling like you live not in reality. I don't know how other people feel. It would be interesting to hear feedback from other people who travel to different countries, who don't speak language, and yeah, how they feel when they're going on holiday in different countries, how they feel about this. So it was.
I find it fascinating that disconnect and how you coped with that for so long. That's a sense of, apart from your Russian community that you had, but in the big wide world, it's almost lonely, I would say.
It is. Yeah, it makes you really lonely, really isolated. And they gradually take you step by step to this loneliness, and obviously I assume it could lead to depression as well. Yeah, this kind of situation, and then it's difficult to bring that self-esteem back, because when you start to gradually lose your self-esteem, like kind of you're not inside the society, you just kind of outside of the culture of everything. And yeah, it's just quite difficult to come back. And even now, obviously, because I stay here for many years, I have all, like, majority people is English speaking now, and I have jobs in English and I communicate, but I still have this kind of insecurity about being rejected because of my language.
And how did you cope with it?
Sorry, say again, please.
How did you get out of it? How did you actually cope with it?
I started to meet English-speaking people step by step, and I realized that people were very helpful. Which in my mind it was kind of the people will laugh on me that I don't speak properly, but people step by step help me, because they kind of help me to speak. They kind of show this respect to me, show me that I'm the same like they are, and they try to understand me. So this is what helped me step by step slow to come out of this kind of fear of this lost myself, because I kind of lost myself in some point.
So there's again, Mitchell, there's that, we've spoke about it a few times, that sense of community, that sense of other people helping people. It's so important. What about you, Mitchell? Have you had anything to?
Well, no, what I was going to add was when Inessa was talking just then, we were speaking about the loss of, let's say, the connection. Look, obviously you come to another country, you've lost the language that you're used to speaking, suddenly you're somewhere, and obviously you'll find it difficult to communicate. So that's your first loss. The knock-on effects of that is the loss continues. Loss of sense of self, loss of confidence. There's so many things that suddenly then spiral from that one aspect of loss. So not only, whereas, for instance, to make it quite simple, when I've traveled abroad, most countries I've been to, even if, which is generally I don't speak the language, a lot of the time we're really fortunate with English, because most countries people do, speak the language. So you don't have that real difficulty in that sense. And I think now with our phones and Translate, obviously back when Inessa came here, obviously it probably wasn't around. So what I'm saying, but now we have that advantage. Whereas when obviously Inessa came, you didn't have any of that, and that total sort of loss of just everything really, self, confidence, it must have been extremely, I think that must have been extremely challenging. And, well done to you for managing to continue to progress and strive forward and get to where you are now. So that's, I just wanted to say that part really.
Yeah, absolutely. In 3 years. What about you, Mitchell? Have you had any personal, like that kind of thing?
The only thing that I was laughing to myself just then about how being in that situation. I was away once, and obviously using our phones for directions in other countries is really easy. So I was out, it was late, it was a Christmas time, and I was on a bus, and my phone died, and the bus kept going, and then I ended up in the middle of nowhere. And so then I had no phone. I couldn't remember the name of the hotel. So then I was just stuck. And everyone I tried to approach, because it was 1 o'clock in the morning, didn't really want to talk to me. Also, there was a language barrier. Now, I was quite stressed at that small incident, because I got home at, I think it was 3:30 in the morning by the time I eventually found my way and got to where I need to get to. That was just one small thing, which at that point I was so anxious and stressed about, which is nothing compared to what Inessa has gone through. So, when I think about it, I just think, oh my gosh, how challenging that must have been.
Oh yeah. I've experienced an interesting loss. Thank goodness it was only temporary. But I was blind for 6 months, 80% blind.
Oh no!
Really?
How has it happened?
And
that's what I was going to ask.
And it was the most weirdest experience ever, because it happened gradually. In fact, it happened before the 6 months, but 6 full months I couldn't really see. Okay. And I had enough sight to be able to, that nobody would realize. So I was out and I was wandering around, and I didn't need a stick or anything like that. So nobody ever kind of caught on. Only the people that were really close to me knew at the time. But I'll give you an example of how blind I was. I was standing on one side of a narrow road on the pavement, and on the road was a massive bulldozer, right? A big tractor bulldozer thing. And I could not see it that big, but I heard it, right? So I knew that there was something there. And only when I came right up to it did I actually see it. And that went on for 6 months until I had an operation and it all got completely fixed. In fact, my eyesight was better than it was before. During that time, it made me so much appreciate, right? I mean, we hear about this all the time, you know, loss makes you appreciate it. But what was wonderful about this is I actually got it back again, right? So it was like I got the loss, I really got the appreciation of what that was, and I got the gift of it back in return, which doesn't always happen. And so I really, really appreciate my sight now more than I've ever done in my whole life. It's just every color, to see textures, to see differences, and to see all this kind of contrasts is absolutely magnificent. But what was interesting, I think, also was how much I actually got used to it. I was, after a few months, it became so natural. I almost kind of forgot what it was like before. And that was the scary thing, that sometimes you can become adapted. Well, humans are adaptable things, but from the point of view of, I wonder sometimes how much we adapt to our lives that are not really, it's more a maladaptive adaptation. Do you know what I mean? We become comfortable with things that maybe we shouldn't really be comfortable about.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that relates to a lot of how people probably feel about at this present time, where certain cities, probably Manchester included, losing their loss of freedom with regards to going where they want to go, visiting family, that loss of, again, which initiates that loss of connection. I mean, I know you can talk to people, you know, maybe on the phone or even as we're doing, well, like a video, but it's never the same as that actual connection of touch, especially with family, you know, and stuff like that. And also friends, you know, so it must be for a lot of the places in England at the moment that are in tier 3, it must be kind of, you know, that loss of the things that you normally do day to day that now are unable to or restricted to do.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Inessa in a little bit about that in a minute, because I think freedom is something, especially in the Western world, okay? We've kind of grown up knowing all we know is freedom.
Yeah.
Right? And when it's taken away, and there's no doubt about it's taken away, whether it's taken away for good reasons, taken away for bad reasons, taken away for reasons that nobody's really sure about. But when it's taken away, I think, you know, back in March, everybody was in a little bit of a shock. So they kind of just did it, right? And then they did funny things like, you know, dances and putting out videos and all sorts of weird things. But now that it's kind of gone on, right? And it's been taken away again. There was a little bit of freedom given, and now it's getting taken away again. Again, not getting into the reasons why at the moment, just the fact that it is much more difficult. And a lot of people are beginning to question it this time, I think, and say, wait a minute, freedom is so valuable. So is life, right? And life and death, and there's all that to weigh up. But the humans need freedom, and that's why I want to turn to Inessa, because Inessa's come from a place where freedom was not always, and maybe still not, as free as we have grown up with.
Yes. Yes, it's true, because we grew up in the communism system, and it was communist system, and it was kind of big control. What we're doing, how we're doing, was kind of system set up for us, which we had to follow. And yeah, so it was quite make you think all the time about each steps you do. So it's kind of less freedom, and also mentality as well. Mentality is still not that open mentality when the people set up for you kind of rules, even age rules or society, like everything, like kind of if you like 20 years old, so you must get married. If you're 30 years old, you must done this, and you have to have career. You can't go study to university. Yeah, so it's all the time kind of control, which when I came to England, I felt absolutely different. I'm feeling now absolutely different. It's kind of more freedom.
Yeah.
And it's very strange to feel that.
Comparison. And I think when freedom is up for discussion, which it is at the moment, it's up for discussion whether we should or we shouldn't. What I'm finding is, and Inessa, you might even recognize this, but some people, depending on what side you're on, some people are, they're beginning to take the role of policing, right? So there's not really a secret police going on now, but if there was, that was the kind of thing you would see, is people saying, oh, look, they're hugging over there, maybe we should report them. And I know that there are people doing that. Oh, we've seen people hugging, there's a party going on there. There's 2 old age pensioners, and they're holding hands. I'm not making this up. These are reports that I've actually heard from people that, even in the establishments, even in the National Health Service, even in official bodies where they make reports if rules are broken. And so if they find 2 patients had been, whatever, that report, or a patient and a relative, hugged, that will get down on the report. But it's not down in the report necessarily for, okay, so you have to have tag and trace or whatever, but it's more that judgmental, not understanding human nature of a drive to be together, right? And so then you get one part of the population beginning to actually hate another part of the population, maybe calling them murderers or calling them, all sorts of, and these are going on. And I'm sure that's something that has been also where you have, came from growing up, maybe, Inessa, you've seen this kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely, how you say, yeah. Yes.
And I think we have to be very, very careful. There are rules and regulations, but we have to remember, hopefully, these are temporary. And when this thing blows over, we don't want to have a wrecked society that we've been hating one another because of something that was temporary, or that we've, we used to phone up and complain about our neighbors because they, had 7 people for dinner and not 6 or whatever, right? There has to be even the police don't understand all the rules properly. But there's a lot of people who jump, and my opinion only at the moment, is a lot of people jump on the pointing of the finger. And I think we have to be very careful about this. Avril's just saying that she thinks it's great that I got my sight back. Believe me, I do too. Irene says that she lived in Spain for 12 years. At 60 years of age, she couldn't speak a word of Spanish. Uh-huh. But as soon as she learned the language and tried speaking in Spanish, she was treated with much more respect. Yeah. So another loss is the loss of respect from others. Yeah, absolutely. We lose respect from others sometimes. And that kind of links into what I was saying even now, I think, is a lot of people are losing respect because they're breaking the law, or they're not, wearing the mask exactly the way it should be made, and so on. And here's, if you don't speak, like Inessa said, she felt that people didn't realize how educated she was because she could express herself.
You can't get job, you can't get proper job. It's literally what is limited here. So it doesn't matter if I have a degree in Ukraine, I came here, and some people was treating me kind of, oh, you came here, you just can get the basic job, which I wanted to do something more, use my brain, like my skills, but I couldn't because everything is English. How you speak, how much you understand. Obviously, they're not gonna take you to work. So yeah, it's true. It's a big loss of opportunities. To get opportunities to grow, you have to start from beginning, like a baby, walking, speaking. Then you're gonna achieve, or you maybe achieved already many years ago in Ukraine.
And that's very difficult. What would be your advice? What would be your tips? What would be your, if somebody was asking you, whatever, I've had, I don't know, hair loss. I've had loss, Avril writes loss of pre-COVID life, loss of language, loss of sight. What do you say? What do you think? What's the advice in life with regarding loss, do you think?
I think it's like my opinion to just accept and try to find different opportunities what you can do, what you have ability to do. So for example, if I don't speak English, I have to find out what I can do more, or for example, how I can change this, go out, socialize with people, every day learn one word, just be more confident, don't lose confidence. Or I think if the people, for example, lost sight, it's very, like what you now experience is really difficult. It's like kind of tragedy, lost sight for 6 months, but some people could find out to do something different. They use like body skills in different way, like, to adapt to the situation, accept, and try to find out where to move on from this situation, how to improve their life.
Mitchell?
I was going to say, I think pretty much what yourself and Nessa have said, really, because I think the initial, depending what your loss is, that part of acceptance in that moment can be quite challenging for some people, not for everyone. People experience things and deal with things in a very, very different way. Depends on also their support network in that given moment. And I guess really from what I'm only going by, I guess using what Inessa was saying, the fact that obviously she had to learn the language, different culture, different ways of doing things, bank systems, bus systems, train systems, there's loads of different things. So I guess for some people that can be a challenge, or for someone else it could be just an adventure in that sense. But depending on the loss, whereas with yourself, Dove, loss of sight, that must have been, well, I think for me in that situation, that would terrify me. The fact that I wasn't able to see, and just not having that. And also, can I ask, Dove, just briefly, were you aware that you were going to get your sight back, or you didn't know and it was something that you found out later on? Or when what was happening to you happened, had you been told, no, there's going to be an operation, it's a temporary thing, and then you'll be able to have your sight back? I'm just curious.
I was under the impression that I was going to get it back. Of course, an eye operation, 2 eye operations.
Okay.
You don't know, or at least I didn't know. The doctors and surgeons can tell you, oh, we do this every day, but not done every day for me. So, the fear was there. Yeah. And getting 2 eye operations was a serious thing for me, but I had it was in my intention, it was in my consciousness that it was going to get fixed. So it wasn't like, but as I said, if you'd asked me beforehand, I would have said it would have been a nightmare for me. And the surprising thing was the fact that I got used to it, and I could have probably gone on another I don't know how long. I could probably go on for a long, long time getting used to it, because you begin to forget. And when it actually came back to me, things were so alive that almost you forget what it was like beforehand, because it becomes the new normal. And I think we have to be careful of the new normal. I think we have to be careful of it. And I'm deliberately using that, right? Because we can get used to things too easily. And I think in a democratic world and in a world of freedom, we need to ask the questions. We need to be on the ball and not, sink in to being complacent. On the other hand, generally speaking, with loss is that if it's gone, it's gone, and it's very difficult. But as Inessa says, and I agree with her, is that we have to find ways to adapt to that in a good way. And it might be, and I've met lots of people, whether they've lost limbs or whether they've lost other things that are really important to them, lost money, lost businesses, lost material things or spiritual things or people that are close to them. Life is very, very fascinating in that sense. And people can still contribute from wherever they are. And so to meet people where they are, to understand that you can regrow. I was doing a course on trauma. I'm actually doing it at the moment. And one of the things that they showed was a tree that had been chopped down, and all was the old bark. But from the old bark, you start to see new growth. It's quite incredible. And if you follow it, that grows into, and it might not be the same tree, of course, that it was, but it grows into something else. And it still is beautiful. It's different, but it still is beautiful. Okay, last round before we close off this week's This Is It. Inessa.
Yeah, can I just say one word to people? Wherever I know the loss could be very difficult in the life, but please, people, don't lose yourself. That's it.
Yeah, wonderful. Don't lose yourself. That's really, really important. Mitchell.
I guess really to look for as much support as you possibly can, and just adapt and push forward. Always push forward. Just look for something that you can focus on that's going to give you a purpose. Definitely need purpose.
Yeah, meaning and purpose. I'm going to take a combination of both of yours. Loss, no matter what it is, even if it's the most trivial type of loss to the most heaviest type of loss, is painful in certain ways, and it can really pull you down. And sometimes you might be down for a bit. You do boxing or whatever. Sometimes you're on the mat and you're there for a bit, right? You might be able to stand up within a few minutes, or it might take you till the next fight, right? You might just not be able to get up in that fight. But the idea is that you come back again. So I think sometimes we've got to realize sometimes it's all right to stay down for a bit, a little bit of self-care, a little understanding that grieving is important, understanding that there's loss is important. But at the same time, as Inessa says, not to lose ourselves in all that loss, right? So pushing forward with the meaning and purpose motivating us, and having that something, that direction that we want to go in, and knowing that new growth can come if we give it the time and the care and the attention, and not to wallow in the past. I think we can break through into something beautiful.
Definitely.
So that kind of closes us down for this week on This Is It. It's been wonderful meeting up with you guys again. I wanted to go into town and see what was happening, but it didn't quite work out for me. But maybe next week we'll see what's going on, as Manchester tonight in a few hours goes into Tier 3, whatever that means. I'm not quite sure myself, but whatever it means, it's good night from me.
Good night.
It's good. Are you going to say it's good night from? Yeah, it's good night from me.
All right. And you too. Take care, guys. Bye.
Stay
for now.
safe, everyone. Stay safe.